right.
Stop it!
I want that ride, lady.
Help! Someone help!
Shut up, you old pig.
Hi, I'm Mark from An American in Russia. I'm going to speak about something today that maybe not all of you have had happen to you, but I think you can all relate to it. Now, I think that if you're living in a country different than the one which you grew up in, that there'll always be things that you miss. In my case, a few of those things are pastrami and corned beef. Now, these items are not available here in Russia, and actually, they're not really even known by most Russians. And I'm actually envious of Russians because they aren't even aware of what they're missing sometimes. Now, don't worry. This won't be just an episode concerning New York deli delights, but much more so about perseverance. You know, even when I lived in America and I had access to pastrami and corned beef whenever I wanted, I still only had it once or twice a year. But I knew it was there if I did have the hankering for it. Now, over the past 24 years here in Russia, I hanker after these much more often, most likely because I know I can't have it. I think that many of you know how that is. Now, if you look at YouTube these days, you might think that there are just droves of Americans moving to Russia. There are not. Seriously though, perhaps if you're an American family with 25 children, you might believe that this is where you should come. But it would appear that in America, for now anyhow, you have a minimum of a 4-year reprieve from the schools trying to trans all your children. So you're safe in America for now. Go ahead, stay there. Besides, from what I've seen, America is not sending the cream of the crop to Russia. And I don't mean all the people, all the Americans, but I mean many. I think I'll avoid many of them, actually, most of them. My point being, I've not yet bumped into an American enclave here. And if I did, I think I would steer clear anyhow. But I can't just head to the local American supermarket and get my fix of pastrami or corned beef. Now, the internet in Russia is very well developed. I would say in many ways more developed than it is in America. It's certainly faster and cheaper. I'm also embarrassed to say that even after 24 years, my Russian is still not great. In fact, it's going backwards since I've retired. Yeah, really. Oh well. However, as with many people who learn to overcome their adversities, I've learned to compensate for my shortcomings. In this case, I've become a master of internet searching within Russia. If something is available here in any small corner of the country, I will find it. Becoming a master searcher is harder than you might imagine. You need to think in 2 languages, just to think up the correct search terms, often adjusting things as search results fill your screen. Well, I'll get back to this in a few minutes. To make either corned beef or pastrami, you need to start with a beef brisket. So, in my life as a pensioner with more time on my hands, I decided that, like with so many other food items I miss, that I would learn how to make it. I don't mean make a brisket, I mean make corned beef or pastrami. Now, I started this process some years back by finding and downloading American and Russian beef charts. Additionally, I needed to know the Russian names of cuts of beef and their English equivalents. I did, however, learn that often there is no equivalent cut between the 2 languages. Russian butchers and American butchers sometimes see a cow through different lenses. I finally gave up after some failures. Then, about 6 months ago, I decided to try again. Part of the problem is that I'd never before bought a whole brisket, so I wouldn't recognize one if I saw one. Now, my wife and I visited a few large supermarkets and also meat markets. We did find what we were told was the cut of beef we were asking for. We looked at the 2 charts, and I bought it. Well, it wasn't what I needed. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't what I'd been missing all along. Then I thought, time for some logical thought. There are many here in Russia who have spent considerable time in the States. Some have taken things or ideas that they liked and tried them here in Russia. There are also a lot of Russians who are absolute masters at barbecue. I mean, here you can buy any kind of grill. I have a Weber, I bought that here. But you can buy any kind of ceramic grill, it doesn't matter. Additionally, there are other very unique grills here that are used in Central Asia that I'd never seen or heard about before. And certainly, many of these people are experienced at smoking meat. I figured the people who are such specialists at smoking meat have certainly heard of beef brisket, kind of the king of smoking meats in America. So I started to search different Russian sites specializing in grills and smokers, and I looked for clues as to where I could buy the needed meat. Within 10 minutes, I had the names of suppliers who would sell through the internet and have the meat delivered by refrigerated trucks. Bingo, motherlode. I found that there was a cattle farm about 100 miles or 160 kilometers from me that was a huge supplier of prime beef, not only to Russia, but also all of Europe. However, they only sell to wholesalers. But I quickly found a large wholesaler of theirs in Moscow, which would deliver to me in Tambov. Now, in a situation like this, I have the browser translate the web page. The picture of a beef brisket looks simply beautiful to me. Certainly not like anything we had found at the supermarket or meat market. But it was this part of the description which really excited me. The words corned beef and pastrami just leapt off the page and had me drooling all over the front of my shirt. At last, I had met with success on my beef brisket search. Soon my corned beef and pastrami hungers would be satisfied. I just knew it. And just a little funny factoid. The name of the company that the wholesaler I found in Moscow, the name of the company is Man and Meat. It's a nice strong name for their company and a hopeful name for big slabs of meat. However, the web address is manmeat.ru. I mean, man meat? Kind of a different, unpleasant picture in my mind. But I saw a picture of the meat I wanted, and I still felt good about this. The online ordering process was a little more involved than ordering an item from Amazon or Ozone. I ordered online, but then a manager called to verify things and explain the delivery process. They also sent me a special link to use in order to pay for the meat and the delivery online, rather than pay COD. I just prefer to get it all out of the way, so there's no fumbling for money or paying the driver. Can I do it with a card? Do I need cash? Whatever. Do it online. Get it over with. Now, I was starting to feel really good about this. My wife, on the other hand, was certain that my money was being sent to a bandit and that I would see nothing. Bye-bye money. Seems weird, but often I have more faith in systems in Russia than my wife, who was Russian. Maybe that's why. Here's how the delivery would work. The Moscow company's truck would deliver the meat along with other orders for Tambov, usually shops here, to a local Tambov delivery truck, who would then contact me with a location and a time to meet him to get my meat. In other words, he would deliver to the actual shops, but not to an individual. Not a big problem. He'll call and we'll head to a local shop and do the meat transfer. Well, delivery day was 2 days in the future, and I was pretty excited that morning. By noon, no call, but it's still early. Well, by 4 p.m., no call, and I was getting worried. My wife was definitely giving me the I told you so vibes. By 4:30 p.m., I asked my wife to call the company that we bought it from and find out when it would be delivered. Well, the manager informed my wife that the meat had been delivered, which clearly had not been delivered to us. My wife told them, and the manager said she would find out what happened and she'd call us back. At this point, I was getting the I told you so stink eye. I could tell she was wondering how she could have married such a stupid man. She certainly did not expect a call back from the manager. Well, surprise. The manager called back and told us that there was some confusion, but our meat was being stored in a refrigerated warehouse and would be delivered the following morning. Well, not exactly what I wanted to hear, but at least we had some info and the meat was being kept cold. Frankly, when they first called and said it had been delivered, I slunk out the front door of the house, unlocked the outside gate leading out to the road to see if there was a big slab of beef out there with dogs fighting each other as they ripped it to shreds. Fortunately, nothing there. There were a couple more telephone calls until finally the manager told us what she now understood had happened. The local Tamboff trucker delivered the meat to a shop, even though they didn't order it. Rather than tell the trucker, the shop owner, rather than tell the trucker he made a mistake, the shop owner called his mother-in-law and told her that he had a big hunk of beef she could have. Who knows? Maybe he sold it to her or gave it to her for her birthday. I don't know. The manager from the company we bought it from called the mother-in-law and made arrangements to have a courier get the beef from her and deliver it into my hands, which did happen. Now, I gave the courier a good tip, and I didn't tell my wife, though, about the tip. She thinks I'm crazy when I tip people for services, but it's me. The beef was actually semi-frozen, not yet frozen through, but the Babushka had put it in her freezer. But it was factory vacuum packed, and that packing, the seal hadn't been tampered with. I used an electronic food scale to weigh it, and it was exactly as stated, so I guess I could now be happy. Now, just so you know, this is actually a very Russian story. As I've said hundreds of times when people ask what I like most about Russia, I'll usually say, it's not boring. Anyhow, as for the purchasing the meat online experience, it was a mixed experience. The local trucker was an idiot, and the shop owner was an ass. However, the company we ordered it from went the extra mile to find out what happened, and then made me whole again. I was impressed, and I would certainly order from them again. The only thing I would do different would be to meet their trucker, who was coming from Moscow, meet him here in Tamboff and have him give me the meat, rather than to trust the local delivery driver. It was also nice that my wife could feel right about how you can't trust local business people here. But I felt good because the service given to us by the company we purchased the meat from, the service was beyond excellent. By the way, the meat weighed about 5 kilos, that's 11 pounds, and it looked just beautiful. Well, telling this story took a lot longer than I had anticipated, but I do need to at least give an epilogue here. We gave the perseverance part, now let's talk about the taste. So I decided to first try my hand at making corned beef. Having it for dinner would be great, but even greater would be having corned beef sandwiches the next day. Making corned beef, it's a bit of a process. First, you have to make a marinade with boiling water, various spices, a decent amount of dissolved salt, a little bit of sugar. You marinate it for 5 days. Then once I take it out, it was 7 hours in a slow cooker. But oh my, it was absolutely delicious. Better than any I had ever remembered having in the States. And for my wife, it was the first time, and she knew that all the trouble we went through was well worth it. The following morning, I woke up early and worked at baking some nice New York Jewish rye bread. I had sliced the leftover corned beef the evening before and put it in the fridge. Well, a corned beef sandwich can be very simple, but delicious. Simple meaning applying some nice mustard on both pieces of bread, of the rye bread, and let me tell you, Russian mustard is really good. Then layering the corned beef, open your mouth, insert the sandwich, and enjoy it. The following day, I made Reuben sandwiches with the corned beef. These are a bit involved, but also delicious. Pastrami starts the same way as corned beef, meaning the same marinade for the same like 5 days. But then the process is more complicated. I have about 3 kilos left from the brisket, and that'll become pastrami. This will become all beautiful, delicious sandwich meat. I'll also have this on homemade rye bread and then freeze some for a later date. This video went a lot longer than anticipated. Yeah, I know. I could have edited it to a little bit more to reduce the length, but truly, I'm not sure what I would cut from it, what I just said. I think it was all important to the story. Anyhow, I'll see you in my next video. Until then, paka.